All right, this whole video is going over checkpoint, adding and subtracting rational numbers IXL. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one, we have 3/10 plus -1/10. Because the fractions have the same denominator, you don't have to get a common denominator. All you have to do is simply add the two numerators, and the numerators are 3 plus -1. So I have 3 positives and I have 1 negative. So those two cancel out or make a 0 pair, so I'm left with 2 positives, so my answer would be 2/10. Now I could write 2/10 in here and be okay, but 2/10 does simplify to 1/5, so I'm going to put 1/5 in as my answer because it simplifies. The next one, I have a mixed number plus a whole number. So I'm going to have -2 2/5 plus 7. So I have +7 and -2 2/5. So basically what this is kind of like a subtraction problem. So basically I have like 7 and I'm taking away 2 2/5. So I could rewrite this 7 minus 2 2/5. But what I need to do is I need to have some fifths to take away. So when I'm going to go through and I'm going to make this one whole, borrow one whole. I'm borrowing one whole number, so I have 6 left. And I'm going to write this as a fraction. Now, I can write this fraction as 1/1, 2/2, 3/3, but what makes the most sense is to write that one whole as 5/5 because I want the in the fifths already. So now what I'm going to do is 5/5 minus 2/5. I get 3/5. And 6 minus 2 is 4. And so my answer here is 4 3/5. And if it confused you why I flipped it and why I did 7 minus 2 and 2/5, remember, whenever you're adding and the signs are the same, you simply add them and keep their sign. But when the signs are different, when you have a negative and you have a positive, when the signs are different like that, you can subtract and take the sign of the larger absolute value number. And so because the 7 is the positive, the answer would be positive 4 3/5. Okay? All right, let's go to the next one. 9 3/5 minus -7 3/5. I want to rewrite this one because this one's confusing as it is. I want to write it with my adding the opposite. So I'm going to write it as 9 3/5. Instead of minus, I'm going to do plus, and I'm going to do the opposite of -7 3/5, and it's +7 3/5. And well, that makes a whole lot more sense. Minus a negative is the same thing as adding the positive or adding the opposite. So now I can just simply add them together. 3/5 plus 3/5, that's 6/5. Now, pause right there. Let's go ahead and add the 9 plus the 7 together, and we get 16. Now, 16 and 6/5 sounds weird because 6/5 is an improper fraction. So what I want to do is I know 6/5 is one whole and a little bit more. So when I'm going to put in here minus one whole, which is 5/5, and make that a 17. Then I'm left with 6/5 minus 5/5. I'm left with 1/5. So that's how I get that number. So when I had that, like, okay, I've got a mixed number, but I still have an improper fraction, that's how you would do that. You would take away one whole, 5/5 is a one whole, and it would go from there. So 17 and 1/5. All right. 8 1/2 minus -9 1/2. Let's rewrite it. Adding the opposite. 8 1/2 plus +9 1/2. Way easier. Now, half plus a half makes a whole. So I'm going to just take that. That's one whole. And then 8 plus 9 is 17. So 17 plus the one whole would make 18. So this is 18 wholes. This next one, now I've got a fraction and a decimal. And so there are two ways I can do this. I can rewrite that 2/5 as a decimal. 2/5 is the same thing as 4/10. And I could do 4/10 minus 5.4. And that's going to be a negative value because I already have 0.4. and I'm taking away 5.4, so that's going to put me further in the hole. So what I could do is write this as 0.4 plus negative 5.4. Okay, I would do that. And then you're going to, because the signs are different, subtract 5.4 minus 0.4, and you just get 5. And take the sign of the number with the largest absolute value, and it's negative, so the answer would be negative 5 there. Now, there's another way you could do this. You could see negative, or you could see the minus 5.4 as 5 4/10, and you could do 2/5 minus 5 4/10. Whoopsie. Let me write it bigger. 5 4/10, or 5 2/5, really. 4/10 is the same thing as 2/5, and you could do it that way. Okay, and then you could still do 2/5 plus negative 5 2/5. And then what you would do is those 2/5 would cancel each other out, and you would be left with negative 5 again. So both of those ways work. Next one, 2.5 minus negative 9 1/2. Let's rewrite it. I'm going to write it 2 1/2. 2 1/2. And instead of minus and negative, I'm going to add the opposite, so it'll be plus 9 1/2. Way easier to deal with. Not half and plus a half makes a whole. So we're going to have one whole. And then 9 plus 2 is 11, plus the whole is 12. So that would be 12 total. You could have done that as a decimal. It would have been fine to do it as a decimal. 1.9 minus 4 3/10. This one's the one I would want to do as a decimal. 1.9 minus 4.3, because 3/10 is 4.3. Now, the 1.9 is smaller, so I'm going to be in the negative. So what I would do is add the opposite. So now I have a negative. My bigger value is negative, so I know my sign's going to be negative. I'm going to make a little note here. Sign's going to be negative. So I'm going to do 4.3 minus 1.9. Don't forget my sign's going to be negative because my bigger absolute value is negative. So let's borrow from the 4, make that a 3, make this a 13. This is 4, and then 3 minus 1 is 2, so it should be 2.4, but it's negative. Negative 2.4. It does not tell you that you have to write it as a fraction or a decimal. It should work either way. All right, this next one I'm going to write it negative 7 4/5 minus negative 6. Remember, when you're subtracting a negative, or subtracting, you can add the opposite. The opposite of negative 6 is positive 6. And so, sorry, you hear my garage. My family's coming in. So if you hear some talking, it's just them. All right, so what we've got is we've got the bigger absolute value is a negative, so my answer is going to be negative. So I'm going to do 7 minus 6 is be 1 4/5. So this should be negative 1 4/5. All right, next one. 9/10 minus 3/5. Well, I know that 3/5, I've got to get a common denominator here. So I can get a common denominator of 10 here. And so this would be 6/10, because 3/5 and 6/10 are the exact same value. They're equivalent fractions. And now I can subtract. 9 minus 6 is 3/10. So this would be 3/10. All right. Negative 2.3 plus negative 8. Negative 2.3 plus negative 8. Now, their signs are the same, so I'm going to simply add them together. 2.3 plus 8. I got to line up my decimals. It'd be 10.3. And because the signs are both negative, my answer is negative. So it'd be negative 10.3. All right, the next one. Negative 1 plus negative, negative 1 plus negative 4.1. The signs are the same, so I'm going to simply add them and keep their sign. Their sign is negative. So I'm going to do negative 1 plus negative 4.1 would be negative 5.1. Negative 5.1. All right, let's look at the next one. 6 plus negative 5, or 6.5 plus negative 5. The signs are different here, so when the signs are different, we're going to subtract them. So we're going to do 6.5 minus 5.0. You got to line those decimals up. So we got 1.5 as our answer. And we're going to take the sign of the digit with the larger absolute value, which would be positive. So your answer there would be positive 1.5. All right, we're almost there. 3/10 plus negative 3.5. This is one where I'm really tempted to write them both as decimals, and I'm going to. 0.3 plus negative 3.5. You can keep them both as fractions. I kind of wanted to do decimals here. All right, so we got the signs are different, so we're going to subtract them. 3.5 minus 0.3, and I get 3.2, and I'm going to take the sign of the digit with the larger absolute value, and the digit with the larger absolute value here is negative, so my answer would be negative 3.2. Now, let me show you. If I put it in, even though those are fractions and I put it in a decimal, I can still count it as correct. Okay, and I could have written those as fractions, so it would have been totally fine. All right, let's do one more. Negative 9 and 3/10. I'm going to do negative 9.3. Minus negative 4. Minus a negative. Remember, we're going to add the opposite. So we're going to do plus negative 4, which would be positive 4, which is the opposite. Now, our signs are different. So when your signs are different, you're going to simply subtract and take the sign of the digit with the larger absolute value, which would be negative, because negative 9.3. So this would be 5.3, and it would be negative 5.3. All right, that's how you do those. I hope this helps.